Hey guys, welcome back to our podcast. This is episode 372. Thank you for being longtime listeners. My name is Sean.
And I am Aisha. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about Elon Musk's Neuralink implant. I'm sure you've probably heard some stuff about it. I know Aisha here is very, very keen on the subject. I'm honestly pretty clueless on this. But yeah, so what exactly is the Neuralink implant?
Okay, so the Neuralink program is a combination of both the implant, but also this like robot that sews it into your brain. Trigger warning. It's a chip that has a bunch of microbes, more than 1,000 of them that are super tiny and super flexible, and a robot basically threads it into your cerebral cortex. In other words, it's just a medical device that literally reads brain activity and then transmits it back to a computer. So it's just a visual way of seeing what's actually going on inside of your brain. A lot of the times there's a combination with AI. It's supposed to work with advanced AI and trying to figure out what those images mean, but also controlling it in a way where you can read it, but also maybe change it in the future. I don't know. There's not a lot of data, unfortunately, about the chip because it's the history is really weird, and we'll talk a little bit more on this later, but Elon hasn't really given a lot of information on what's been going on. So yeah, that's a little bit of what the product is.
Okay, cool. So I know you mentioned combining Neuralink with AI.
Right.
How exactly would that work when it comes to why would that be beneficial?
So the thing is that with Neuralink, you don't really know what the images mean. It's brand new technology. No one has ever gone in and been able to read brain activity that type of way. So the AI helps kind of determine what's going on, but then also hopefully predict how things are going to be in the future. For medical purposes, it's said that they're trying to use it for different mental illnesses, such as I'm trying to remember if it was schizophrenia, or do you remember when we were chatting about it?
I think a little bit of Alzheimer's and stuff like that too.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it reads that type of brain activity and then hopefully is able to predict it for the future uses of medical personnel, medical devices, things like that. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Supposedly that's what it's supposed to do. Based on our research, based on my research, the testing hasn't actually shown that necessarily. They did test it out on a pig, but we can get into that when we get into a little bit of the history, if you wanted to kick us off with the history of it.
Yeah. So I think history would be a great spot to start off with. Basically, I'm sure most of us listening to this or watching this have heard of Elon Musk and have an idea of what kind of stuff he does when it comes to AI, him making innovative technologies. But Elon Musk founded this with a team of 7 scientists. Founded Neuralink with a team of 7 scientists.
And engineers. So it was a combined team, right? Yeah.
Yes. I believe it was in 2016, but I think they didn't announce it. Yes, yeah. So they didn't announce it though until 2019?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So they were working on it in secret for a little bit before they're like, hey guys, we're messing with the human brain. So, yeah, so I thought that was kind of weird but cool.
I think it's just weird. I would just like to say we've had a debate about this. I just think it's weird that they didn't announce it necessarily the way when they started building it 3 years prior to their announcement in 2019.
Yes.
So sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
You're good. So basically, in the prototypes, which you would see if we were to pull up prototypes here, would be
we don't have
about the size of a quarter. Is this implant, and they kind of drill into the back of your head. Is that right? They drill into your head?
Yeah.
And then they put this thing in there, and then she was talking about the robot. It sews it into your brain.
Yeah, so there's little threads basically of what actually connects to the brain, and the robot goes in and basically places those, inserts those. I don't know necessarily the ins and outs of the medical doing of the product. But yeah, the device, it's supposed to be so small, the threads are supposed to be so small, you have to use this robot, and it's the only thing that can place it onto your brain. But we're not going to get too deep into this surgery because we're not medical professionals and it's kind of gross. But yeah, so that was the prototype, and that's kind of what they're running with right now as well. So it's kind of like it's half outside of your skull and half of it's inside of it. Yeah.
The pictures are nasty, by the way. Just letting y'all know.
Yeah.
So I know that you said they experimented with this on a pig. So can you give us any information about this pig? Like, what happened?
I got you. So the pig's name was Gertrude, which I think is a hateful name to name anything. But so in 2022, the chip was embedded in the pig, and it was a success. However, in terms of failures, So a lot of scientists think that it wasn't that impressive because it basically showed the electrodes in a way that was supposed to be like state of the art, but it had basically been seen before. And then this professor from Newcastle University stated how the implant was really cool and nice, but the information they got from it wasn't necessarily like legible and or brand new. So the technology was new, but the information found from the technology wasn't really new. And that was like the success that allowed Neuralink and Elon Musk to start human trials that happened in 2024, so earlier this year. If you want to chat a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I remember reading, I actually sent you a couple posts, that they had their first successful trial with a human, and he, after the surgery, made pretty much a full recovery. Everything, he exceeded expectations on recovery, and he's now able to do basic keystrokes on computers and like devices, stuff like that. And he also, I think he's been playing chess too with his implant. So I thought that was really cool. It's nothing too like advanced yet, but imagine being able to just sit there and play a game of chess. Literally just thinking about it, I think that's really cool.
Right, yeah. And that was actually, again, like we said, in 2024. And they did use the robot to sew it into his brain. So we've seen the robot work and we've seen the chip kind of work, but it's not to the level at which it was promised in its application for the medical purposes.
Yes.
You know, we haven't, even to this point, we haven't seen any type of like advancement in medical practices based on the information. Right now it's like, okay, like your brain can control a computer, which is really, really cool. I will say it. I will no longer be devil's advocate. Like that is actually really cool. However, it has not reached the point at which it was promised, you know, for sure. Yeah. Which is my personal beef with it. Plus, like we'll go into a little bit of the opinion based of it, where they talk about like opinions of pros and cons. And what I was reading were way more cons for the product than the pros.
That is true. That is true. I just think it's very interesting, too, now that we're actually getting human subjects involved and actually being tested, how, with the advancements in AI that we're seeing every day, how AI could possibly help us understand the human brain more and actually help us get this to the point where we wanted it or needed it to be, in order to actually help people for medical reasons, not just playing chess.
Right, but that always brings up the conversation about privacy, right? In situations like this, I think a lot of the debates that I read were who's controlling the technology and who's going to use the information being like given via brain, right? And then how do you protect against it? Like how do you kind of adjust what people are seeing based on brain activity and what you don't want them to see based on brain activity? And then obviously like potential risks and side effects. Like what happens if you go crazy? You know, again, like because the first human trials were in 2024 earlier this year, there haven't been any type of like long-term effects. So a lot of researchers are also really cautious and concerned about the lack of like transparency about the implant. When Elon Musk kind of announced that they were doing human trials, he went around explaining exactly what they were doing. So there's been a lot of speculation on what's actually going on because Elon won't really talk about it. Yeah.
So that was a couple of the cons.
Right.
So I think I personally like to look at the brighter side of things. I know that you're not always into that, but I like to look at the bright side. What kind of stuff really could come out of it? What could be the really awesome things to look forward to in the future? Maybe not right now, but things that it could develop into in the future.
Right.
So a couple things I was thinking of when we were doing our research was, is this thing going to make us more or less human? And what kind of like extra stuff is it going to be able to allow us to do? Because like we've seen that humans have limited capabilities when it comes to what we can do, what we can even think about.
And that's for like healthy minded people, right? And this brings up the conversation of like this was made for people. I think we read around something like, you know, paralysis, blindness, hearing, to advance those type of things for individuals that don't necessarily like are abled in specific areas. So sorry. Continue.
No, you're good. So could this make us be able to think faster, be able to be smart, be able to be smarter? You know, what could this actually do for the average human if they're able to get these things implanted in their head? I just think it would be really cool that we could just get that one step farther. Instead of having to study a subject for 10 years in order to become an expert, maybe with this, we'd only have to study it for 2 or 3 years to become an expert. Imagine how much more stuff would be able to be done in a shorter amount of time, you know, and more accurately.
Right, and I can completely get behind that. I'm not a true hater, but I also think in technologies and innovations like this, there have to be levels of like regulation. You know, like the 7 scientists in Elon that have been behind this project for since 2016, almost 10 years. It's been 8 years? Yeah. Math. I think it's really amazing, the innovation of the technology and where it can go. But I also think there's some ethical concerns, privacy concerns, you know, things like that. Like we need transparency to know what's going on to get behind it. We also need to talk about consumers, right? So like who is buying this product? Who can buy it? Who can kind of interact with this technology?
Yep. So I think last time I was on the website, I could sign up to be a test patient, like literally right there. Yeah. So I don't think they're being too picky. Obviously, there's stuff that hoops you're going to have to jump through and things you're going to have to like prove and make sure that everything's okay, whether it be mentally or physically. But it looked like I could just sign up right then and there.
Right. And that goes into the conversation about the market, right? So if that's the case, if like people that don't necessarily have the need, right? Which that's a whole question as well. Like who has the need for this type of product? I think also gives us this understanding that it's a huge market. You know, this can be a huge, huge product, not just for medical purposes, but for day to day, as you were mentioning earlier. So the market is there. And I think it would be really amazing, you know, to have these kind of things like, you know, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia. I think obesity was also kind of on there, how to control your brain and body kind of like simultaneously. I think it would be phenomenal. But I also think that there should be some regulation, ethics. I think the pros and cons need to be, you know, equated to some bound before it goes kind of wild on the market, for sure.
Agreed.
Yeah. So yeah, you know, like we have our own opinions, and I think we differ in our opinions of the technology, but you know, go check it out. It's a really cool website. There's a lot of cool papers on it on the web. And yeah, it is really cool technology. It's just, you know, new technology it's just kind of out there. There's a lot of unknowns with new technology. Yeah.
So,
cool.
Okay. So I think this is us signing off.
Thank you guys so much for watching.
Yes, thank you.
Like and subscribe. Do people still say that? Or is that just like a YouTube thing?
Yeah, so, okay.
Thank you guys. Bye, guys. Well, it's been announced in 2019, but it's been in development since 2016. Continue.
Okay. Bro. We're doing bloopers. But
I feel like your hand going to change.
Fingers. Okay.
Pull it together. We have work to do.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
We're good. So welcome back to our podcast.